Craig. I'm back today with another episode of my troubleshooting on the Bighorn. I put a new battery in just a few weeks ago. Everything was great, but I'm not seeing any action now on the starter motor when I turn the key. So I think I've got a problem with my starter solenoid, and I'm going to walk through the steps of digging into that today and how to troubleshoot that kind of problem if you're having a similar issue on yours. If you lift the bed on your Bighorn, you can see the starter. It's right there, about below right behind the seat. If you remove the bench, you can get to it a little bit easier. But you'll see the red wire coming from the starter solenoid, and then you should, if you turn your key, be able to measure voltage between there and the frame of the motor or the negative side of your battery. What I'm seeing is there's no voltage there when I turn the key. On the other side of the engine bay where your battery is, you'll have a wire coming off of the battery here. This is going to the this is a pretty heavy gauge wire that's going to the starter solenoid, and if you take this little rubber boot off, you can measure 12 volts here all the time on this side of the relay. Now when you turn the ignition key, of course you got your foot on the brake. When you turn the ignition key, you can check to see if you're getting 12 volts on this side of the relay. I'm not getting it at 12 volts on there at all. I've got a jumper wire connected to the negative side of the battery and to my black lead on the multimeter, and then I have pulled off the black wire from the relay. That's actually what's going to have plus 12 volts on it, and we're going to measure between that and the negative side of the battery. Just turning the key to on, I'm getting about 1/4 of a volt on that black wire that goes to the relay, and then when I put my foot on the brake, you'll see it goes to 12.3. That's the battery voltage showing up on that side of the relay. And also looking at the wiring diagram, you can see one other thing. The other side of the relay comes over to this block that's like the ignition wiring. So when you throw the key for the ignition to the on position to start it, it's going to ground that side of the ignition coil to the battery ground or the frame ground. For this check, I've got one side of my multimeter tied through this yellow jumper wire to the battery ground. I've got the positive lead on my meter just tied into the orange wire, which normally goes to the starter solenoid, and I'm going to see if that gets pulled to ground when I turn the switch. On my meter, I've now got it set for measuring ohms. I've got it on just 2K ohms setting here on the meter, and when I turn the switch, you'll see it goes to basically 0 ohms or 0.1 ohms. So the ignition part of this thing is working, the switch is working. So after doing some looking around yesterday, I decided that I was going to replace the starter solenoid with a universal type that's available from the local auto parts store. I didn't want to wait to order one from Bighorn. That'd probably take about a week, so I just went ahead and bought this one. Now the only trick I have is to mount it, since it doesn't fit exactly the original mounting location. So there's probably a couple ways you could mount the starter solenoid, the universal one that I bought. What I decided to do was reuse this rubber piece that the original one was mounted into. It just slides onto these two tabs that stick up. It's a rubber piece of molding, and it fits on there pretty snug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend these tabs down. There's two tabs that come out on each side of the solenoid. I'm going to bend those tabs down and then put a small screw or a bolt through the rubber piece, and then mount the starter solenoid right to this rubber piece. So here's what it looks like after I got the universal starter solenoid installed. The only other issue that I had was that these rubber boots right here, they're really slightly too small for the size hardware that was on this solenoid, so I had to cut a small slit in them just to get them to slide forward. If I was doing it again, I would probably disconnect on the starter, and I already had it disconnected on the battery side. Of course, you got to do that. You want to have this side disconnected so you don't have 12 volts flying around and potentially shorten to the frame. Or you can disconnect the negative side of your battery if you want as well. But if I was doing it again, I probably would disconnect the wire going to the starter and disconnect this one so that it's easier to work on this. And then just once you get all the wiring done, attach the solenoid to the mount and then reattach the cables.